Let's get started. All right, good morning, everyone, again.
Morning.
Let's report to order the employee retirement system of the government of the Virgin Islands. Regular meeting of the Board of Trustees for July 23rd, 2020. Roll call, please.
Trustee Colwood. Trustee Colwood.
He's on mute.
Coward,
Trustee Colwood absent. Trustee Barry.
Present.
Trustee Clendenin. Absent. Trustee Cohen. Trustee Liger.
excused.
Trustee McDonough. Absent. Trustee Smith.
Present.
Chairman Calendar.
Present.
4 present. 3 absent. 1 excused.
Alcina Kwashi here for Trustee Clendenin.
All right. Okay. Comments and suggestions from retirees? Okay. Communication and correspondences.
First piece of correspondence dated July 2nd, 2020. It says, "Dear Mr. Nibbs, in regards to rent deferment till September 2020."
Excuse me, Mr. Nib, sorry to interrupt, but Mr. Chair, I mean, you could always do it in whatever order, but the minutes should have come first.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry, yes. Sorry, trustees. I'd like to have the minutes, Secretary's minutes for the regular meeting on June 25th, 2020 to be approved. Any suggestions, any corrections, deletions, additions? If not, I'd like to hear a motion for approval.
I'll move to approve the minutes of the previous meeting.
Second.
Trustee Colwood.
Yes.
Trustee Barry.
Yes.
Trustee Cohen.
Yes.
Trustee Liger. Excused. Trustee McDonough. Absent. Trustee Smith.
Present.
Chairman Calendar.
Yes.
5 yes, 1 excused, 1 absent.
Attorney Williams, is it appropriate to mark Trustee Carwood present?
Yes, you could acknowledge her presence for purposes of the vote.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And we can go back to communications and correspondences.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to keep interrupting. Mr. Nib, should it be 2 absent?
No, Ms. Clendenin can't vote.
Clendenin can't vote.
One excuse, one excuse and one absent.
I got it.
In the roll call, Trustee Carl was absent because her picture was not on the screen and she was not responding. I mean, I just heard you said something. What are you alluding to? That I should mark her present?
Well, I'm present now.
No, just put a notation that she's not.
Letter dated July 2nd, 2020 from Havenside Merchants Association. Dear Mr. Nibbs, rent deferment till September 2020. With reference to your email as of June 26, 2020, as you would be aware by now, all major cruise lines have officially canceled all sailings till the end of September 2020. With each passing month of cancellation, the rent deferment scenario becomes increasingly untenable. Thank you. Yours sincerely, Ram Mupuri, HMA, copy to Kathy Smith, General Counsel. Email from Tom Ballas, dated July 15, 2020. Mr. Nibs, good afternoon, and hope you and yours are well. Just wanted to touch base and check in. First, thanks again for all your support during these difficult times, but know that our position remains the same as it relates to rent and reopening. Due to the continued uncertainty of when cruise lines will return to our USVI waters, and coupled with the delay of reopening Frenchman Reef, we feel our proposal is fair. I will continue to remain in touch and update you on any information we receive. Warm regards, Tom Ballas, Little Switzerland. Correspondence dated July 15, 2020 from the Legislature of the Virgin Islands, Committee on Finance. In regards to Committee on Finance considers bill on Tuesday, August 4, 2020. Dear Mr. Nibs, the committee cordially invites you to appear and testify on Tuesday, August 4, 2020 in the Earl B. Hartley Legislative Hall, St. Thomas, USVI at 10 a.m. to consider the following bill. Bill number 33-0315, an act amending the 3 PIC chapters 27 and 28A, adding a new section to each chapter relating to annuity payments to provide for a procedure for the government employees retirement system for auditing a retiree's annuity, proposed by Senator Kurt A. Valley and Janelle K. Soro. The committee will meet to receive testimony as we discuss the purpose of the above referenced bill. Your testimony should include all pertinent data and expert opinion as it pertains to the subject matter. Please provide written testimony no later than Friday, July 31, 2020. In addition, please include applicable information regarding the following: support or in opposition of the proposed legislation, advantages and or disadvantages to passing the bill, economic impasse, economic analysis of the proposed legislation, recommendations to the bill. Thank you in advance for your time and cooperation in this matter. Please contact C.R. Rivera at 340-712-2202 or Senator Valley at legvi.org to confirm your attendance. Submit testimonies and address concerns, questions, or concerns. Sincerely, Kurt Valley, Chairman, Committee on Finance, 33rd Legislature of the Virgin Islands. Copy to Carl Knight, Chief of Staff, Office of the Governor. That ends the reading of the correspondences.
Thank you, Mr. Nibs. Chairperson's report. Going in again. Excuse me. One, it continues to amaze me how certain members of the 33rd Legislature can find the time to promote legislation that has the primary purpose of precluding the board from carrying out its fiduciary duties. First, they attempted to change the education requirements for board members by passing bill number 33-0132. That bill was vetoed by the governor. Then there was bill number 330338, which indicated that the board must get legislative approval before implementing any policies that would have an impact on existing members. Now there's bill number 33-0315, which dictates the procedure for the system to implement regarding the auditing of a retiree's annuity. The bill that I would like to see is one that appropriates $1.7 billion or some major portion of that amount to the GERS in order to avert its impending insolvency and the possible collapse of the territory's economy. I would like to remind the members of this system that in 2018, all, and that's with the capital letters, 15 senators run on the promise of fixing the GERS. To my knowledge, during the past 19 months, the system has received an additional $3 million into its coffers. And Mr. Nibs, I'd like you to confirm or correct me on that. And the election here is here again. And you will hear slogans such as your choice for solutions. Members, please ask all of the present senators what solutions have they provided or plan to provide to eradicate the myriad of problems that plague this territory. While they continue to wrangle over mundane issues, GERS, the elephant in the territory, gets no movement. This is intended to admonish the members to seriously evaluate who you want to represent you in the 34th legislature. As one of the present senators recently said, it is time to move in a different direction. Your continued well-being may well depend on your vote. I want to commend Trustee Bobby on his letter to the editor if I had not done so, and to also acknowledge the great editorial in the July 11th edition of the Daily News. But most importantly, I want to thank the retiree groups for their support in our case before the U.S. Third Circuit Court of Appeals. See you all next month. That's the end of my report. Mr. Nibs, was I correct? Have you received more than $3 million?
I didn't understand the context.
You didn't. What additional monies have we received from the plan sponsor?
I know that we received $5 million that was ordered by the court. I don't know where the $3 million doesn't ring bell to me.
Okay. All right. So I'm off $2 million.
Do we receive any money, Mr. Chair, from lottery? Mr. Nibs?
Lottery.
Yes, we've been receiving the funds. I would think that we received the last 2 quarters.
That's not new money, right? I mean, that's
No,
money
it's-
that's already
Money
expected.
that comes to us every year for the bonus.
Right.
Okay. Okay. All right,
I
thanks.
must say the government is submitting the monies. So, we really don't have any issue with receiving monies from the central government right now. There's something with the donor revenue fund, matching fund that I need to send a letter to them in regards to. Anyway, there were no major meetings or presentation during the last few because I was away on leave. As far as the applications for retirement
Before-
application,
Before you proceed, Mr. Nibs, I have a question, and if it's out of place, let me know and we'll discuss it. Tell me when it's a good time to discuss it. But in terms of the the legislation, is it a case where you need, whether you respond or you respond on your behalf, you respond on behalf of the board, or would you, is it an expectation that the board gives you some sense of what the board's response is going to be? How does that work?
I'm assuming that you're talking about the one that I read where I was invited on August 4th?
Well,
Any
specifically,
legislation?
yes, but in general, I mean, there are 2 pieces of legislation that came out recently. The one that says, and I don't know where that is, there's one that says that they need to be notified. We need to get their permission before we do anything
We
that.
responded to that.
I don't know. We wait. That was special order, so we didn't have an opportunity to respond. Waiting for the governor to ask us for a response.
Okay.
That was Bill
I have,
0338.
I have-
Didn't invite us to that. I guess we will wait until the governor has access to respond. We didn't know a special order, I think.
We need to.
so do we know, do we know where it's at now? What's the status of it?
No, I don't.
Bill
Okay.
number 330338.
Is that something we need to be tracking? I mean,
Yeah, we need to send a letter to the governor opposing.
Well, we can send a letter to the governor indicating, I don't know what is the board position, that we don't oppose it.
Okay. So, gentlemen. Hello?
I'm hearing you. I don't-
Okay, we may need to deal with that after because we're out of order as far as agenda. We need to finish committee reports and then go back to that or
Can add it
anything.
to the agenda, it can be added to the agenda.
Well, it could be part of unfinished business because it was a conversation part of your the communication. So,
Okay.
but we were in the committee reports. So, in order to keep the flow of the minutes and the notes, we need to finish committee reports.
Well, then I think then somebody needs to make a motion
Well, we could just
that
address
we
it.
add to the agenda under regular unfinished business.
Or we could address it under legal matters if you
Or
want.
it can be addressed under legal matters.
Okay,
It is a
just as
regular
long as, we have a discussion, I'd like us to be sure to have
Okay. I don't have no problem.
okay.
So,
Regards to the time-
we were in committee reports. The chair did his report. I mean, we're
No, we're not. No, we're not.
Actually,
No,
we're the administrator's report.
I know, I corrected myself. We're on the administrator's report. Sorry. I have corrected myself.
As far as retirement applications, as you can see, we have 107 still outstanding as of today. Refunds, just about the same. We know that there were 362 cases completed through July 31st, which is, that those would have been completed through July 31st for $5.6 million out of $5.9 million. Debt benefits being actively worked on. There have been some movement. We completed 46 from October through July, and we have 83 cases still pending.
What's Mr. Nibs, what's the story on those that there's some stemming back to 2015, that's 5 years ago? What's the story?
There's a lot of things. I mean, about one or two while in the week, hospital.
Explain missing contributions.
They're missing contributions, they're missing NOPAs. I'm going to be submitting a report at the end of the month for my appearance before the legislature in regards to that. So,
Okay.
okay. Life certificates, it's about the same. Still holding suspended 9 annuities because of non-receipt of the life certificate, and 8 are still pending. Annuity payments, number of annuitants as of July 15, 8,697. This is being reduced, it's going down. Cumulative dollar paid out from October 2019 through July 15, $202,785,940.54. Number of retirees added from October to July 15, 275. Number of retirees deleted from the payroll from October to July 15, 263. The retiree gross payroll was $10.7 million for the 7/15/20 pay date.
Excuse me, Mr. News, on that point, I see that the number of retirees, as of July went down from 87, I think it was 8,700 something. But yet I'm seeing that the number of retirees added to the payroll is more than the number of retirees that have been deleted.
Yeah, but you know, if you net out, what was added and who deceased, it's not how much, you know, it's going down.
Oh, okay.
And you must remember also,
All right. So
yeah, so it's like a kind of a one-to-one. But
okay.
we're not
All right,
seeing,
thank you.
yeah, we're not seeing applications coming in like they used to. The retirees that are being added to the payroll are getting less and less. I guess people are realizing that maybe they need to stay longer as an active employee. That's my interpretation. The portfolio loans are going down rapidly. These loans should be, all of these loans should be expired by 2024, 2025. We do have 91 mortgages left. Those probably go through the 2030s. The total of the loans in the portfolio as of June 2020 is $39.5 million. This is rapidly being reduced. As far as operations, in the St. Croix office, a fire drill was conducted by Pleasant. This is something very important, and all went well with that fire drill. Building, the roof repairs are tentatively scheduled to be completed during the third week of July on the executive complex, which should be completed this week. Utilities, complex continue to experience regular power outages. I want to thank God that the emergency generator continues to function. Security guard building renovation is approximately 35% complete. The glass door replacement for security purposes, regards to active shooter protection, which we have had training within the agency, is awaiting codes from two vendors. The St. Croix building, I'm happy to report that the exterior work has been completed.
St. Thomas.
I'm sorry, in the St. Thomas headquarters building. The work has been completed outside. Building looks very well. It's nicely painted. The work was satisfactory, and there were some minor corrections which have been corrected. We did sign a contract for the AC unit. As you know, we're replacing the entire air conditioner within the entire building. The slab for the placement of the chillers is complete. We make sure that our generator is in service and in good order, because we are now into the hurricane season. We did have some issues with our generator last week. However, we were able to get it fixed. There was a loose cable in the battery, something like that. Also, we want to set to that the build out of the Havenside Mall office is complete. We are waiting for the computer equipment to be installed. However, did a site visit yesterday and it's complete. And a couple of pieces of furniture have to be also installed. As far as the rental and electricity, in June we collected $74,657.90 between rental and electricity. Fiscal year to date, we've collected $999,653.07. Of that, $430,865.44 should be reimbursable. Was reimbursable from the tenants.
One second on the White House. Where does it stand with that whole the elevator situation?
Whatever. I didn't understand you, sir.
On the White House, in St. Thomas near the pier. We were talking about putting in an elevator.
The elevator is there, sir. I mean, I think Otis, from what I understand, the shaft it was built for that I don't consider it's an elevator, but it's more of a lift. Otis cannot put an elevator in that space because they don't have that size type elevator. The only thing we can do is continue to maintain the elevator and use only for disabled, maybe 1 or 2 people to go up in the elevator, but it must be maintained on a monthly basis.
Right, but that situation has been dealt with and pretty much settled out.
Well, it was not the contractor's fault. He built based on the drawings from the architect. And I guess we accepted it.
Because it was a historic building.
Because it was a historic building, you couldn't really do too much. We got to fit, you couldn't do anything outside the building. Let's see, we thought about putting the elevator outside of the building, and we couldn't do that. So what we're left with is try to maintain the elevator and make sure it's in working condition if someone needs to go up or down.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. As you can see, our arrearages are increasing because when you say arrearages, because it includes rental deferment, which I can't say our arrearages, but so our rental arrearage is about $100,000, and it's mostly between Department of Justice. And our electrical arrearage, the same thing, the Department of Justice. It's about $119,000, $80,000 for Department of Justice, $38,000 for Department of Personnel. So we are constantly, discussing with the tenant. Justice did not ask for deferment, so I'm not sure where they are or what they plan to do, but we will follow up with them in regards to their rental arrearages because it's $74,000. Okay, that's all I have to report. Any questions?
Any questions, trustees?
And if I have one, in regards to justice, you said there is no communication in regards to delayed payments. Have we reached out to her recently again to justice?
We send updates every month to them, and in the letter we let them know that they're in default and they need to satisfy the payments. I have not had any personal discussion, but I'm sure that they do receive our letter, and she has not responded.
Okay. Well, perhaps we need to set up a meeting with her in a one-on-one to get this matter solved.
Yeah, very challenging. That's all I'm going to say.
What about the correspondence from the other, the mall vendors? Have you responded to them?
Every now and then they send us emails, saying that they're not open and thank you for the deferment. However, we need to consider other options and those type of things. I plan to have a meeting with them sometime early next month. But no, just every now and then you may get an email. Yesterday I had an email because we had some issues with some flooding and backup of sewage up until last night, 11 o'clock. We were dealing with that. So
I was talking about the two pieces of correspondence you have in your report.
Yeah, I know. The Havenside tenants, yes. We don't receive, we receive calls or we receive an email every now and then just saying, they're not open and they don't think they're going to be open for maybe till December, and thank you for deferring, but however, we need to consider other options, those type of things. Not anything formal. We go over there, they see us, some are open. It's not that much activity. I know some down in Main Street, some of the stores are open, and there's a store, same store in Havenside. Taxis do come up and drop them off, you know, to look around. But I was there yesterday for about 2-3 hours at Havenside Mall and walking around and with the architect and other people. And there's no activity per se. I know that Tappan Sills, they have an issue now. They had put up some barriers because of COVID, and we had to legally tell them to take it down, which they did. But there's no activity going on. But they do inquire. From just, you know, Mr. Nibs, we're not open, it's very hard, you know. Thank you for the deferment, like I said, but, you know, I don't think ships gonna come in until next year. You know, they're moving it up from September to December, you know, that type of thing. Other than that, no.
Okay, so you're not expecting, I mean, they're not expecting a formal response or anything, is that what you're saying?
No.
Okay.
Like I said, we plan to have a meeting. We didn't have a meeting this month in July, but plan to have another meeting with them very shortly.
Okay.
Some did respond and says, you know, we received the PPP, things like that. Some have received the PPP. We have a listing now from that which has been circulated publicly, so we know exactly who has received PPP. Some received PPP, they have corresponded with us, but they didn't receive for rent, that type of thing. We have met with a couple, Kathy and myself met with a couple tenants who are concerned and said they want to know if we can forgive the lease or whatever, you know, that type of thing, because they may want to leave, you know, that type of thing, you know, something that is constantly looked at. We do meet with them, like I said, they ask questions, they asking about their leases and could certain things be forgiven, maybe they can get out of the lease after a period of time. So all of those things under discussions with them.
Mr. Nez, when you meet with them next month, maybe perhaps because of the uncertainty in the world now, maybe they need to start catering to locals, you know, along with, because I know it's a cruise ship based thing. I think they probably need to change their product and cater also to local. So maybe something you could, you know, mention to them.
Well, I know one thing they request is to meet with the board. They always ask me to want to meet with the board, and I try not to have the board intervene at this time until we can. But they want to meet directly with the board. So if the board is willing, I can set up a meeting with them. Can set up an investment committee meeting and let them do Zoom. But they always telling me they want to meet directly with the board.
Excuse me, Mr. Nibs. With the governor extending this emergency situation till September 9th, after we see what's going to happen September 9th in the cruise ship industry and so on, it might be a good idea at that point for the rest of towards the end of the year, the last couple months, to meet with them before those last couple months to at least settle out some of this.
Like I said, I plan to meet with them next month. You know, it's the same thing. I mean, we know what the statistics are, but they're just saying the same. They're looking for another option. And it's a bad word to some of us. Okay, to me, I think to me too, but you know, they come across, that's what they discuss all the time. They're looking for another option.
So what is the other option? To me, it's either or. I mean, the only other option I've heard from them is forgiveness. What's the word they use? Not instead of deferment.
Abatement.
I mean, I'm not gung ho on board getting involved in this thing, but if we ever consider meeting the board, it has to be with with a proposal. I mean, they never say. I have never gotten any indication that how an abatement put them in a better place from a business standpoint than a deferral. And I think, I have a personal feeling that once they get an abatement and that comes off, that means they're forgiven for that. That I don't see how that improves their position from a business standpoint.
Well, I
mean,
understand.
if they could convince me that an abatement put them in a better position to stay in business than a deferment, we may want to look. That may be something I'll be willing to talk about. But I just see them trying to get that off the books, and then they close the business anyway. And this is one bill that they don't have to worry about paying once they close down. That's all.
Yeah, or continue with the deferment, and we'll put it at the end of the lease, and then at that time we would, that type of thing. They're looking for something. I understand. I know what they're looking for because they have said it to me in certain words. They said that they have, kids on their home, their personal line, and this, all of that, and they're looking for that option of an abatement. So, like I said, and this is only the merchants, because the other businesses are not looking for that. They never discussed that with us. We did receive, obviously, the last time last board meeting, board made some decisions, and those people stepped up to the plate. But it's only a certain segment of the tenants that are looking for that type of treatment. Okay? But I'll report back. I'll have a meeting with them and report back.
Just to express my personal position, I'm not only
Yeah,
one.
I understand.
If they want to, if all they want to talk about is abatement,
I'm telling you, that's what it is.
well, I mean, they have to come with, that conversation has to come with
Okay.
some part of a plan that shows how an abatement put them in a better place than they deferred.
Right.
All right, Mr. Neb, you continue to meet with them, and when you think it's appropriate for the board to meet with them, let us know.
Okay.
Okay. All right, let's continue. Can we get the committee reports? Anyone is prepared with a committee report?
I can go first. Policy committee on the agenda is the adoption of the governance manual today. So we'll be doing that today on the new business. I thank everybody for the work they put in over the past few months trying to finish up the document.
All right. Anyone else?
There was no budget committee meeting. Nothing to report.
Anyone else? The medical review committee had some schedule of hearings. Hopefully those hearings will be held sometime within the next 60 days. Anyone else? All right, then we have the treasurer's report.
Good morning, board chair, other board members. This is the government employees retirement system schedule of receipts and disbursements for the month ending June 30th, 2020. Receipts from collections, loan repayments, 1,343,913. Year to date, 14,507,212. Rent from tenants / utilities, 95,578. Year to date, 1,007,717. Rents from Haven site tenants, 79,866. Year to date, 3,201,553. Employer retirement contributions, 8,138,504. Year to date, 69,748,049. Employee retirement contributions, 4,181,636. Year to date, 37,385,960. Parking facilities, 720. Year to date, 6,410. Miscellaneous, 44,512. Year to date, 11,492,846. For total collections of 13,884,724. Year to date, 137,349,748. Disbursement, annuity payment, 21,618,680. Year to date, 197,393,281. Administrative expenses, 1,297,702. Year to date, 11,864,210. Personal loans, 7,848. Year to date, 206,012. Mortgage loans, 14,572. Year to date, 177,329. Retiree loans, 1,044. Year to date, 21,840. There was nothing for auto loan and land loans. Year to date, auto loans, $12. Refund of contributions, 851,353. Year to date, 7,253,266. There was no allotment to WICO for the month, but year to date, 1,378,925 for total disbursements of 23,791,199. Year to date, 218,294,877 for a net cash deficit of 9,906,471. Year to date, 80,900 net cash deficit.
Hello, somebody. Hello, Mr. Jeremiah. Can you hold on?
Yes.
Whoever else is not speaking, could probably turn off mute their phones because it's feedback.
Okay.
Okay, net cash deficit year to date, 80,945,129. That ends the reading of the receipts and disbursements for the month.
I have a question.
Hello, I don't know if anybody's hearing this.
Why is there so much feed? You know who is feeding back right now? Huh?
Miss Hill.
Who's him?
Miss Hill.
Miss Hill. But who's feeding? Who's the feedback?
It was her.
It's her. Miss Hill is
It
you the one
started
that's
with
feeding back.
Jeremiah.
But my thing was muted, so I just unmuted it just to tell you all. That's it.
It was with Miss Jeremiah when Miss Jeremiah was speaking. It started. It didn't happen before.
Okay, I
That's
have a.
It's gone now.
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead, Trustee Barry, go ahead. Question.
The first one, the $197 million for annuity payments, is that net of the loan payment or is it included in that number?
You're talking about the 21 million?
197 million. I mean, when you do it,
the year to date is the total annuity payment. The year to date, the 197 million is whatever we paid out to them.
And that's
the
net.
gross.
That's the gross.
That's the gross.
Correct.
What I read, Trustee Barry, I don't know if you're zeroing in on that. Mine is fiscal year and this is year to date. Calendar year to date, correct? If this is fiscal year to date also, Ms. Jeremiah? Yes? Why,
yes.
I think why then is a difference between what was given to me by payroll, 202. Is that because of the pensioners or something? There's a difference. Between,
I don't know.
Okay.
I will have to look and see what is given to you and what's on the financial.
Okay.
I think if you add the 197 to the loan repayments up above 14 million, you probably get that close to your number. I mean, it looks like, I don't know. But my question had to do with so when we make the payment, the monthly payment, the $10 million or what, if I have a loan, you give me what you give me will be the net of my loan repayment, right?
Correct.
So that is what will show up in my account would be net. Take out your repayment first and the net.
All deductions are taken out and you will see the net in your account.
Okay, so then my question, so the 197 is before those deductions?
It's the gross.
Okay. So the loan repayments are shown up above as collections.
Correct.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you heard, but yes, that's correct. That's our collection. Your collection. So the loan repayment, that's a combination of all the loans, that personal loans, retiree loans, mortgage loans. That's what's up above.
Okay, and I have one more question. So under the disbursement section, the mortgage loans and retiree loans, are we still paying out those? I thought we had put a halt on loans, man. What are we paying out there?
The loan, there's a schedule of that, Mr. Barry. There's a schedule on page 4 of the. It has to do with refunds. It has to do with refunds. Well, it seems like she's having some problems, but it's reported on page 4 of the Treasurer's Report as supplemental information. Personal loans refunds of $7,847.65. Mortgage loans with insurance and property taxes for the mortgages. And the retiree loans are the credit life and refunds of any overpayment.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
All right.
Trustees, any other question for Treasurer?
Yes, I have one, Dr. Callender.
Yes, sir.
What I'm questioning is the allotments for RICO are non-existent at this point, and what I'm not seeing is an increase in the administrative expenses.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mr. Cohen, we're having a real problem in the transmission of your voice. I don't know what's wrong. Maybe you need to speak a little closer to them. Maybe the mic. I'm not sure.
Okay, Trustee Cohen, I can respond to you. We have two books, sir. Havenside has its own general ledger. So that's the reason why you would not see that. You would see that in a separate report in which we plan to do for the board. They have their own operating account, they have their own general ledger, and then you're saying that you're not seeing the administrative expenses for Havenside Mall. You will not see them showing up on this treasury report anymore because they have their own general ledger, they have their own bank account, there will be separate reporting, separate financial statements.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Any other question, trustees?
That was similar to the question I had. Okay.
No other question? If no other question, I'd like to get a motion for approval, for acceptance.
Mr. Chair, I move to accept the report from Ms. Jeremiah.
Second.
Trustee Colwood.
Yes.
Trustee Bowery. Trustee Bowery.
Not voting.
Thank you. Trustee Cohen.
Yes.
Trustee Liger. Excused. Trustee McDonald. Absent. Trustee Smith.
Yes.
Chairman Callender.
Yes.
4 yes, 1 not voting, 1 excused, 1 absent.
Thank you, sir. Treasurer's report has been accepted. So,
Mr. Chairman, in regards to the investment report, I don't know if you know that Mr. Henderson is out sick, and I'm not sure when he's going to be back. However, I've asked Mikita to submit a report to us. I know that Mikita and Gustavo and Leo are on the Zoom. What I would request is that we go into regular session, and then they would make a presentation in new business.
What was the recommendation that you do what?
Just go ahead into regular session and they would make their presentation for the second quarter under new business regular session.
Oh.
Next on the agenda anyway.
Oh, so just forego the investment officer's report?
Correct.
Okay.
All right, so we move into regular session. And good morning, Gustavo.
Leo is always good.
Yes.
You're on, sir.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is holding well given the current circumstances, and we hope a speedy recovery for Mr. Henderson. Of course, happy to be at least virtually seeing you all. We are hopefully not going to spend a lot of your time in this meeting. We just wanted to give you some updates, a little bit on the macro, and then the numbers for the second quarter for the system. We sent a report that hopefully everyone has in front of you, in your computers. We're going to be only going through a couple of pages through that report. If if you want to please move to page 6 of 58 of that report. Page 6 has the market returns for each of the different indexes as of June 30th. From there, you see the second column, I would say the third, which started with indexes, the second quarter and year to date. Second quarter was a big uptick from the first quarter, with the S&P up more than 20%. That put it as of June 30th, the S&P or the U.S. equities market to only -3%. As of yesterday, in fact, we continue with this trend, and as of yesterday, the U.S. equities or the S&P 500 were in fact up 2.5%. So pretty much recovered all the losses that occurred in the first quarter, and in fact, it's up around 2% as of this minute, to be honest with you, because the markets are a little bit down. So a big recovery from the February-March numbers, without a doubt. Page 7 actually is a graphical illustration of what I just mentioned. So a huge rebound of the U.S. equities, international equities and emerging market equities still lagging for the year. However, all this injection of money from Treasury and the measures coming also from the Federal Reserve have been a big help on putting the markets at the levels that they are today. I will ask you if you can jump into page number. We're going here to page 14, 1-4, please, of the report. So we touched on this on prior meetings. These are the different policy responses around the world, having the U.S. having the biggest amount of money deployed in different policy responses. However, I wanted to touch here because it was during this week, and it was a major milestone for the European market, which they, in fact, on the right-hand column on the monetary column, it says that they announced a 700 billion euro pandemic emergency purchase program, which actually was signed this weekend. This is basically the European Central Bank buying bonds from countries within the European Union that are struggling. So basically, Nordic countries were in better position buying bonds from Summit, which injected money into the market. This, you can argue, has been in the works for like more than 7 years, and this will give most probably a big of momentum to the European market, but more so, it's good news for the whole world in trying to stabilize and inject liquidity in the market. With that, I will ask you to move into page 23, please. 23. These charts represent the US, the Eurozone, and in particular China, the Purchase Manager Index, or the PMIs. This has been another driver of the equities markets at this point. You know, from a big drop in the month of March, all the production indexes have been coming back. You can argue that these improvements in these percentages going back are as a consequence of the economy's reopening, but also, this is a major contributor to the projection on equities markets and, in fact, on manufacturing companies and services industries actually moving forward. So with the reopening, we start seeing, some aspects of the economy, of course, coming back. The next page, page 24, it's the unemployment, which has been more favorable. However, all the biggest economists are predicting that we will continue to see between 10 and 12% unemployment rate from now to the end of the year, with a very slow recovery. So that will definitely, for all the good news that is out there, this will be one of the major anchors to the increased growth in the economy, or the restoration, actually, to put it in that way, on the economy. I will ask you to jump into page 26, which is another important aspect of the concerns moving forward, which is the consumer spending and the savings, which consumer spending going down. People are still not spending money, not feeling comfortable, unemployment, all that is paying in consumer spending. And the ones that still have the luxury of having a paycheck every couple of weeks, we are definitely spending more just in case. It's very difficult to project what the medium to long term is going to look. It's going to look. So, page 27 is actually a reflection of that, which is confidence.
Sean, in here, we don't see anything.
That's what I heard, but that's nonsense.
Asia sent me over.
She sent me too, but I told her, I responded, I said, nonsense.
Yeah, you should have just said he's on leave.
Hey.
Because he doesn't, you saying, telling people he's sick. That's,
look.
HIPAA's really.
How come the officials in government?
Welcome to Zoom. Please press pound. Then enter your meeting ID, followed by the pound sign again.
It's just, HIPAA's very strict about
So
saying
I said
things.
he's out sick. What's wrong with that?
You should just say he's on leave.
Well, fine. I wasn't going to say anything else.
940.
You shouldn't even.
4
Hold
9 5
It's real.
1 4 9.
Please enter the meeting
That's
passcode,
strict.
followed by the
I
pound
said
sign.
medical leave, whatever I said.
Say he's on.
I said it.
I know it's too late now, but I'm just saying for.
The meeting passcode is
Okay.
invalid. Please re-enter your
I knew
passcode,
Asia
followed by the
sent me a
pound
text
sign.
right away.
Send it to you. I told her nonsense. Don't be sending me telling me that type of nonsense. Okay?
So what happened? Invalid passcode?
I don't know.
This is weird. This is not my. He still hasn't on his. Still showing.
The meeting passcode is invalid.
What did?
Please
How we
re-enter
scored
your
on exam.
passcode,
It's
followed
not
by the
HIPAA too.
But
pound
he
sign.
can
It's
say.
not HIPAA.
But if he says it, it's one thing. You can't say it.
Wow.
Walter Reed.
Wow.
The meeting passcode is invalid. Re-enter your passcode, followed by the pound sign.
Suppose
In executive session.
You will see now in the numbers that Leo is going
You
to
are in
present
the
it, but
Zoom meeting now.
the message
Yeah, but
is
remember, this
that
is going out to the
this
public.
is
yeah.
this is definitely a statement that the measures that we've taken, de-risking the portfolio, starting in 2016, were the right measures. If, regardless of the 20% recovery in equities, with all the drawdowns that were in the first quarter, the system is even doing better than the equities per se, with having the majority of the assets invested in bonds. So definitely, if that gives us something, is confidence that measures that we've taken positioning the system in a way that would be able to avoid a major drawdown of exactly the circumstances that we are living was without a doubt the right decision, and the numbers are a statement to that.
Okay, I suspect that Mr. Nibbs is going to get some questions about that whenever he shows up before the legislature. I don't know if you guys are probably aware that that's an area that the politicians usually zero in on. That part of our problem is bad investments. So I think it's going to be important for us to have that history and the performance in context as a response to that. So I'm glad to hear that. So I guess we'll talk a little bit more about that as we talk about our specific numbers. But I think that's an important takeaway.
Yes.
I know that whenever I engage politicians about the problems with the system, the first question, the first finger to point to is our investment history, bad investments, by their definition. I think it's important that we have Mr. Nibbs and the chair both have a solid fact-based narrative to respond to that. And
we have done that many times.
It's clearly a way to, in my view,
we have done that many times, and I don't think they
turn the
understand.
attention away from the things that they need to do, and try to focus the blame on the board. And you'll notice, I mean, those two pieces of nuisance legislation that I recently saw that we talked about, that's all part of the narrative, So I would like for us to have a well-structured story to tell to counter that narrative. As we all sit here today, I guarantee you that that's a question Mr. Nibbs is going to have to answer. So I think it'd be helpful for us, for you to, put even a little PowerPoint talking point presentation that speak to speak to that issue. The history, if not the history of our investments and the returns and how they match up with whatever relevant metrics you have for comparison. That'll be very helpful.
Yeah, and I think that the numbers that we're going to show in the next session that Leo is going to cover are a statement to that based on the performance of the system actually during this quarter and year to date, and in fact fiscal year to date.
Yeah, and I saw that when I was looking through the numbers last night. I saw that, but however, the audience that we're going to be presenting to, we can't throw those numbers up on the board and say, look at that. We need to have it more as a story than as a presentation. So,
Trustee Barry?
So what? So when we I think like to make it a little more, because apparently how we've done it in the past, we've given them all the documentation and the numbers. It didn't resound or didn't wrap around in their brains. So I guess if you do it that way, it may be more comprehensible to them.
Yeah, I could tell you from many years of doing presentations before that body that throwing up a bunch of technical graphs and charts on a board is going to go past everybody. We need to construct a story. We need to tell a story. Here's the story of our investment and the performance. So of course you're going to have some numbers, and some graphs, but you don't, not more than two. You know?
See, and then for me, Mr. Barry, I understand, because for the life of me, for the past few years, I could not understand why these people could not grasp this. Because even as a teacher, my student, with the way we broke it down to them, it was understandable to youngsters. Because in one of my classes, I did a presentation from GRS standpoint in my high school class, and they were like, oh, okay, I see. But then for these adult educated policymakers not to understand it, I was totally confused. I couldn't understand how we couldn't reach them.
You know, they come with a preconceived belief, and you're asking them to abandon that and leave them. So you have to give them something to replace that with. So I mean, you know, these charts and stuff are good, and I guess if you're into that, you understand them. And when I went from here to the actual numbers, I was making the connections that you're making. That if you look at some of the metrics, we're doing fine, but that's because I could read those numbers. And you know, so you're gonna have to translate this a little bit more into. I don't know how you do that, but that's something for you guys to think about. But
yeah, we historically, I think that, and I believe that we share that with you, and from what we saw in the newspaper, you did a very good job of showing some of the numbers last time that we shared an information with you, Mr. Brown. It is, I think historically we made many different attempts, and I think that we share this with you as well, on showing results and what was the decision-making process towards that. You know, happy to go back to that information and put it back again in a way that is a little bit more you know, incorporating the new results, which the moment that we are living right now with this virus and this going on in the market, actually, it's a great justification of all the measures that the system have taken. So happy to go back, review those numbers, and see back again. I think we have always been putting our best effort on trying to deliver the message in the best approaches that we can come to. There's always a certain level of technicality in whatever the message that we're putting together, because you know, at the end of the day, it's numbers driven. But you know, happy to update some of those presentations and share them back to the board and see what you believe might be, you know, a good couple of slides to take to legislation and kind of put together a story.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Good morning, everyone. This is Leo. Glad to be here and great to see many of you. I will walk you over the report as of June 30th, and I will try to incorporate some of the latest comments in terms of sharing the story. So let's start on page 33. There we look at cash flows, and that's a very critical item that can highlight the story of GERS. So the next few pages 33 through 34, 35, 36, look at the imbalance between what money comes in and what money goes out and what is made with the investments. So if you look at the very bottom, at the beginning of the quarter, we had a market value of $486 million and change. And if you look at the difference between the contributions and withdrawals, that's about a little over $20 million that left. It was a strong quarter, however, so we made about the same amount in investment gains. So we maintained more or less the market value that we had on April 1 at the end of June. You look to the right and you'll see the return for the fund, roughly 4%. Now, if you skip over to the next two pages, you'll see it for the year to date and then for the fiscal year to date. You'll see that at some point in time, it is unlikely to make such high levels of returns on your investments to cover the shortfall in your cash flow. So if you look at year to date on page 35, the withdrawal minus contributions, that's about, $45 million in deficit. Investments appreciated by about 15, so you had a decline in value in your fund of about $30 million year to date alone. If you look at fiscal year to date on page 36, the story gets worse, and as you take more and more time, it gets worse. Why? Because that deficit compounds over time. And so in this case, you'll see you have withdrawals of about 137 million, contributions of about 56. So roughly $80 million left the fund, regardless of what your investments can make. You made 25 million, so you'll see that you had a deficit cash flow of over $50 million that went out, including the gains on your investments. When you had, so far in a partial year, over 5% in gains. When we started working with GERS back in 2012, I recall something along the lines that the system had to make somewhere in the low teens to maintain the assets that the fund had at the time. Why? Because there were enough cash flows being taken out. That was enough just to replace and meet those withdrawals in excess of any contributions coming in. That was a tall order to make something like 12 or 14% each year and every year. So some years were made, and you can see that in the return history, but some years were not. There has been no time in history anywhere over the last couple of hundred years when you can make, consistent double-digit gains year after year in a mix of a stock and bonds portfolio. It just never happened. It never will. It is one reason why, after realizing that no additional money would come into the system through the means of a pension obligation bond, through additional funding from the government, through increases in the contribution rates of employees or employers, or through changes to the benefit, which is the largest share of the withdrawal account. When we realized that that wasn't going to happen, we saw, there is no way. We're on a path to insolvency, and so we need to be able to moderate the volatility of the fund to try to arrive at a soft landing as opposed to a hard crash. So that's very important to realize. And as time went by, that percentage gain to maintain the value of the fund increased and increased and increased to the point that at some point, not that long ago, you needed to make something like 25 to 30% to maintain the value of the fund. Now, where the story goes is that is very different than for the average peer or the average public pension fund in the States. So in our country, we have a deficit of about, I think I look at some stats from NASRA or one of those other big, and CPERS, one of those big gathering data websites comprised of peers, public pension funds. It was about 2.9%. The difference between withdrawals and contributions. You were many times that order of magnitude in 2012, and that has continued to increase. There is no pension fund that can sustain a long-term, ongoing approach when you're taking out so much money. So GERS has had an imbalance for years, and eventually it's going to be unsustainable. The returns, on the other hand, for GERS have been outstanding. So we showed at the last meeting that the returns ranked at the top of a broad basket of peer funds with similar assets to you. Bar none, the performance is very, very strong. So the reason the fund is in so much stress is not because of poor investments. And yes, you may make mistakes along the way because everybody makes, and every single fund has losses. Every single fund at different times chose the wrong manager or rebalance at the wrong time. And you know what? It's very easy to judge after the actions took place, but maybe those were the right decisions to be made, and for some reason it didn't work. So that's why you have different assets, stock, bonds, knowing that something is not going to work, but the rest will hopefully pick up the slack. So let me show you some of the numbers for the system on the next session. If you scroll over to page 40, here we have performance for the period that ends June 30th over different trading periods. As you've seen in some of the prior charts, quarter to date, the fund gained 4%. Over the next periods, if you look at calendar year 3.1, fiscal year 5.1, and as you go over, it goes from 6 to eventually 8 to eventually almost 9. So when you compound and you annualize, on average, you have made very strong performance. 8% net of all fees over the last 10 years, and 8.8% net of fees since July 1981. So that's very, very strong performance. If you scroll over, for example, to page 43, here we look at each fiscal year. Again, for example, here we show the last 10, but certainly you can show more. We have that data from from you and from the custodian. But if you look at 2012, when we started working with you, and look through 2019, 2012, 2013, 14, 16, 17, 18. So in most of these periods, even with your issues, you were able to still meet your annual assumed rate of return. Now, you're not expected to meet that every year. You are expected to meet that over rolling annual periods when you compound over multiple periods, and you're able to essentially average bad years with good years, so that on average you make at least 7%, and you've been able to do that very, very well. So overall, for us, it's very clear. The story is quite simple. You have an imbalance between what money comes in, what money goes out. The performance has been strong, and we can, or you can show in any presentation to anybody, whether it's members or legislating bodies, etc. Performance compared to peers, and then cash flow situation compared to peers, and it's very clear in those two charts where the issue lies. The last thing I will show is your positioning. If you scroll down to page 38.
Before you move on, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
And I don't want to forget it. What we are getting ready. I think it's in July. Mr. Nibbs, we're getting ready to do our 2019 financials.
Yeah.
Mr. Nibbs, I think.
Yeah, they're being worked on. They're being completed. They're being completed right now. Hello?
Okay. I mean, well, let me just talk to you then. Are we going to have an issue? Is it going to be an issue in terms what we're seeing now in terms of returns on investment? Is that going to have any impact on the discount rate we're going to use for the present value of the for unfunded liability next financial statement?
Ordinarily, the actuary.
I don't know. That's a question mostly for your actuary. I know that if you use like a 7% rate of return assumption, that assumes you're investing in a broad basket of securities, including stocks, bonds, maybe real estate, private equity, etc. as we highlighted multiple times from 2016 on, when we began a de-risking dynamic asset allocation approach, making that target in the long term is going to become more challenging because the portfolio gets more conservative, invest in bonds. We'd had some positive tailwind because of the dramatic decline in rates that made the value of our bonds go up, but that's not sustainable in the long term. So I would expect, unless we go into negative territories for bonds, as has been the case in Europe, that the returns in your portfolio moderate into lower yet positive performance. And so making 7% will become more challenging, I think, in the next couple of years for everybody, but also for GERS, because it's invested primarily in bonds, and the yield on the bonds has come down dramatically. So unless bonds continue to decline, and unless interest rates levels continue to decline, making 7% or anywhere close to that will be challenging with your assets.
That's.
However, no. I would say adding to that is the fact that that is a pure issue of math in the long term, but on investment returns, right? But if you look into the cash in, cash out of fiscal year to date, if we continue this trend, we're talking 2.5, 3 more years. So that's not even, to be honest with you, a question of long term. That what the issue in the cash flow that we showed and that Leo showed at the beginning of the presentation is the real issue more than hitting the 7% or not, or making those projections down to 5%, which will definitely turn the actuarial valuation of the fund in the long term. However, this path of cash outflows, that comes kind of, I would say, almost irrelevant, because we are talking, $110, $120 million of outflows on a fund that is $500 million. So you're talking 3 more years. So that is clear that the issue here is outflows, is not an investment return. Sorry, Mr. Brown, you were going to talk.
In other words, you're saying, thinking about the unfunded, like the going out those number of years, maybe an irrelevant issue. You're gonna be solvent before we get there.
I mean, if we don't change the path,
right?
And it's clear that with the investment returns, it's an almost absolutely impossible task. If we don't change the path, it's simple math. If we have almost $490 million, and we are depleting 120 a year, that's that.
Gotcha.
So that means like a 25% return just to maintain the market value of the fund. But on every given year, still your liability increases. So for your liability not to increase, you need to make more than 25%, something like in the 30s, 32%.
Okay.
If you know an investment that makes 32%, let me know. I want to invest.
Yeah, for sure.
So to wrap up my comments on page 39, it's the allocation of the fund. And so the blue represents equities in the States. The green that disappeared circa beginning of 2018 represented stocks overseas. And the reddish type of color that has increased from about 20% to now over 70% represents core bonds. So that's the lion's share of what you own. You have a sliver of alternative assets within you, which is essentially the private equity funds, and then you have cash. So when you add your cash and fixed income, that comprises 88% of the fund. So it's very, very conservatively invested. It's not going to be subject to a lot of volatility. So we have a good visibility as to when, if nothing changes, you're likely going to run out of money. And as Gustavo mentioned, it's not that far out from today. the last two comments I have are towards the back of this book on page 44 is how much it costs for the public markets, the stock and bonds in your portfolio, and it's extremely competitive. So you have great performance at very low cost. You're paying 7 basis points all in for substantially all of your assets, which are comprised by stock and bonds. And then the last observation is on page 56. You have 2 private equity funds that were with the system when we began to work with you again in 2012. Knowing the liquidity condition of the fund in 2012, our recommendations was not to invest in any illiquid vehicles such as private equity, real estate, or anything like that, because the capital will be needed quite shortly, within the next couple of years, maybe decade, to meet benefit payments and expenses because of the imbalance between money coming in and money going out. So that's why these investments were stopped, not because they were bad. In fact, they made very strong performance. They made gains in the teens. So Fund 4 with Mesero private equity fund of funds made 12.6% through June 30, and Fund 5 made 18.6% since then. So you need to also understand that the liquidity considerations of the fund prevented you from investing in certain areas that have in fact been quite positive contributors to a fund's performance. So the average pension fund has a much greater allocation to private equity, and if they were able to obtain the returns of the median private equity fund or the returns of these Mesero funds, it would have been tremendous contributors to growing the capital of those funds. You, on the other hand, because of your liquidity issues, you were not able to partake in some of these investments, which of course are not guaranteed in advance, but if executed properly, they have the possibility of generating a strong returns for the fund. So again, this is a small piece, but it has worked out well. So with that, I conclude my presentation. Again, summarizing, the fund's performance continues to be very, very strong, and there's been no change to the liquidity and cash flow dynamics of the fund, which means we're still going in a path that is very difficult ahead, and the time is narrowing for the time when we may just run out of money on this fund. Happy to take any questions.
Trustees, any question for Mr. Festino? None? Lee, I thought you were in Argentina.
Me? I was born in Argentina, but no, I'm in San Diego. I've been here for a while. You cannot even travel to Argentina now. Many places have closed their borders because of COVID.
I got an email from you recently, I guess, suggesting you were in Argentina.
Oh, no, I was planning on going, but I was not able to go. That would have been on spring break for a vacation, but I was not able to go because of the whole coronavirus situation.
Okay.
Yeah, he have a U.S. passport. You're not welcome.
Yeah. In fact, I'm the same boat. I had bought my flights to go down to visit family down in Argentina, and I have until the end of the year to actually use those credits. If not, I'm going to lose them, and I'm guessing at this point I'm going to lose all those tickets.
Thank you.
They may extend it. It's a possibility.
Yeah, hopefully, because there are a couple of $1,000. You know how expensive it is to fly down there.
But thank you, gentlemen.
But thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you all.
As usual, thank you for your great presentation, and thank you for being here for us.
Anytime.
All
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, one of the things I'm going to say, I think I said it many times, when you listen to these presentations, and they've made the same presentations to several of our elected officials, and stress about how well our plan has done, and then you still hear them entertain the conversation entertain the conversation about our bad investments. And so, I mean, and it annoys me to no extent because I keep stressing, and I haven't done it in recent history, that when you look at how much money is expended for annuity payments compared to the monies that are being collected for contributions from employee and employer, that shortfall comes from our investment income. And if we did not have strong investments, we could not have maintained these annuity payments for all these years. Because even right now, this month, we have a shortage of 9.2, well, almost $9.3 million that has to be paid out of our investment income, because that's the difference between the contributions and the annuity payments.
Of course, you're preaching to the choir, right?
Well, I'm saying it for whoever might be listening in addition, because sometimes our elected leaders would have somebody listening in so they can report back to them.
But they don't perform.
No, they act like they have never heard it before. You would never believe that they have sat in multiple meetings with us, Makita, even what's his name? You know what I mean? They've sat in all those meetings with Rocky, and they still act like they've never heard the information before.
Yeah. All right, but time is running out. Okay, next item is the insolvency contingency plan. Whose idea was that?
That was mine, and just to elaborate a little bit. If in the interest of being proactive and prudent, if everything we see says that we're going to be insolvent in a couple of years, and everything we see says that it's unlikely that legislature will do anything to prevent it, I think it behooves us to start to think about a structured process for winding down the operations. I mean, I don't think we should wait until the day comes that Mr. Nibs tell us there's not enough money in the thing to meet monthly payment to try to figure out what to do next. I think we need to have like almost like a playbook of how we deal with that when that time comes, how we deal with it as a board, what instructions you give to the staff. That when we get the call from Mr. Nibs, that's not the time for us to start thinking, well, what do we do next? No.
So are you suggesting we develop some type of a group?
Yeah, we develop some kind of. Well, I ain't too big on groups, but develop.
I don't mean a 12-person group now.
Well, I mean, I think we have. I mean, it's almost like a tabletop exercise kind of thing. That the idea.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Bory did bring this to me, and last week we had a senior management meeting, and we touched on a lot of good ideas. I mean, we'll start with the budget, plus we're looking at employee listing as far as who has how many years, so we start looking at that. But I went through a scenario with them up through insolvency as what we would have to do. My recommendation would be that within the board there be some type of a committee. Can't do it with a whole lot of people, some type of committee. We in operations have started already. We can give you a lot of ideas and recommendations, but we have to look at it from a financial perspective. We have to look at it from financially. We have started that, looking at the budget, where we can cut. We're looking at personnel, you know, who has how many more left, who's leaving next year, who's leaving, you know, that type, and through attrition, not to bring people back on. We'll have to do that, you know, train people to do different jobs and all of that stuff. We have to deal with the unions because that becomes a problem. Because when you start to retrain people and it's not in their job spec and all of that. So we were talking about all of this. But my recommendation would be that let's start this at the board retreat. We start thinking now. We can, you know, like I said, senior staff can bring some recommendations because we live with it every day. And at the board retreat, or before then, we develop a working group, a committee within the board. We can give you information and then you tell us how you're thinking about it. But I think at the board retreat, it should start there. That's my recommendation.
You had some proposed date for the retreat, right?
Well, you said, last meeting you said, let's try to look at October. I haven't looked at any dates yet in October. But at least we can do some preliminary work. We're starting with a budget, like I said. We have to present budget for you for 2021. We have to start with a budget because come 2023 or 24, when there's no more money, that means where the employees going to go? Who's going to pay them? You know, all of this, we have to look at all of this. You know, so I like I said, we're doing some preliminary work, but we need to develop a committee. And let's start full force through the board retreat. We can dedicate that entire board retreat to this because there's a lot of different things we have to look at, you know. So we have I'm sure the budget is going on. I haven't seen it yet. Ms. Thing is going to be sending it to me, but the last budget was 19 million. You can't survive on a 90 million budget. We have to bring that budget down. That means eliminating positions because there's no other way we can get that budget down if we don't eliminate positions. We don't have no vacancies anymore. So it has to be through attrition. But when it comes to that, where we don't have any more money, who's going to absorb these employees? We still would have to administer the services to the members. If it's a pay as you go, where going to be operating out of? Are we still going to have this building? Where are we going to? Is accounting going to be integrated with finance? Is IT going to be integrated with finance? You know, these are the things we have to look at. You know, are employees that are existing going to be working from home since you don't have no place for them to? You know, these are the things that have to be looked at. So we have started kind of like, you know, throwing things off of each other to bring to the board.
Okay, I'm fine. I'm personally finding it as part of the retreat. I just want to make sure that that you know we have some process that we start thinking through that and don't find ourselves, you know, 6 months out.
Yeah.
And saying what the hell are we going to do? If at some point we have to start advising employees, I suspect we're going to start losing some of them, and I guess it probably would be unfair, to put it mildly, for us to be recruiting professional people into our staff if we know that the system isn't going to be there in 2 years.
We have discontinued recruiting. We're not going to bring anybody else on.
Okay. So,
but the thing is, what I'm scared of, you know, we have discussed it in general staff meeting many times, just letting employees know what could happen. And what I'm seeing is that a lot of those individuals or members, young employees who are not vested, obviously they don't want to go. They're going to take their monies out. I'm seeing it here within the system, and I'm seeing it also in the central government. Over the last couple of weeks, I see 3 teachers send in their resignation and they're not vested. So they want to get that money out. So I, like you say, don't want to scare no employees, and I sometimes I try to give them the facts, and I'm letting them know I'm not scaring you, we're not getting rid of you, anything like that, but this is the reality where we are. But you know, we have to really, like I said, we started the discussion, and we'll make our recommendations.
Okay. Okay. Something else I had. What about the board members ourselves? I mean, are we fully protected? I mean, when people start suing, they're gonna sue everybody.
Well, you have D&O insurance. Kathy can speak more about that. I know that we're having it hard to get insurance right now. Very hard, because you know, the insurance companies are hearing about insolvency, and they're looking at the financials, and right now we had it hard trying to get it because we don't have the 2019 financials. So Kathy can speak more about that, but the D&O, we were trying to increase it and we couldn't. But
do we have
right
any
now,
at all?
huh?
Do we have any at all? Is
Yes,
any
we have.
we do.
Yes, we do.
We do. We just got it renewed at the same limits as last year, but I can't guarantee. We had to go to a different market because the prior underwriter wouldn't rewrite it. But I can't guarantee next year that you'll get it at the same limits. So Mr. Nibbs and I have been discussing possibly starting to look at creating a self-insurance fund.
Okay, so I mean, okay, keep that on your agenda.
Yeah.
I think we, I think our working assumption ought to be that, I mean, as at least for me, let me speak for me, as I sit here and I think about the options, to me the most likely option is insolvency. I you know.
Right now, yes. Unless something happens.
Unless something happens, so.
Correct. Right now, yes. And what happens after that, that's the question with this system, because, you know.
Yeah. So I think we need to plan for the worst. I say hope for the best and plan for the worst.
Right.
We need to have a plan in place for the worst.
The self-insurance fund is something the committee can address too. The committee that the board, we can put that into the plan.
Mr. Bowie, you will be in that committee since you don't like groups, right?
Since what?
You
have
volunteered to be in that committee.
Sure.
All right.
I mean, what I could recommend too, it can be a combination of the board and senior management. We can meet and then we report back to the full board, something like that. But we're starting it, and I think we need to devote a lot of that board retreat time to this type of conversation.
Right, okay.
And have it documented and everything like that as a contingency plan.
So can you get some dates for us by next meeting for the retreat, Mr. Nibbs?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Any other discussion on this?
I don't have any more on that, but is this a good, at some point we're going to talk about the pending legislation, those bills that Mr. Nibbs got to.
Yeah. Yeah. We will finish up this and
okay.
After the governance.
The next item, approval of the board governance policy. Trustee Caldwell?
There you go. All right, so everyone should have, we received the cleanup copy from, like, forwarded from Trustee, Attorney Williams, with all the corrections that we suggested and made, and then Miss Coley cleaned up some additional to do some alignment. So you have in front of you the copy or that has been revised and we need to adopt it. But before we ask for a vote, do we have any other questions or concerns? Yes, because. Okay, hearing no questions, can, Mr. Chair, is it appropriate now to request a motion to adopt?
I don't see. I'm sure I saw something that I questioned, but I didn't make a note of it. Okay. Yes, yeah, it will be yes. It will be time for a motion.
Dr. Chairman, I move to accept the new governance for the GERS, the new governance policy document that has been compiled.
The motion should be to approve it, to adopt it and approve.
To approve it, okay. To approve the new GERS governance policies.
Board.
Board governance policy.
Board governance.
Second.
Trustee Colwood,
Yes.
Trustee Barry,
Yes.
Trustee Cohen,
yes.
Trustee Liger excused, Trustee McDonald absent, Trustee Smith,
Yes.
Chairman Calendar,
Yes.
Chair 5 yes, 1 excused, 1 absent. Motion to add to the agenda.
Okay, we need a motion to add an item to the agenda.
Under regular
Probably
business.
the motion should be to amend to amend the agenda to add a discussion on pending legislation.
Mr. Williams, you dropped off.
I was suggesting that the motion should be to amend the agenda to add a discussion on pending legislation.
So move.
Second.
Trustee Colwood,
Yes.
Trustee Barry,
Yes.
Trustee Cohen,
Yes.
Trustee Liger excused, Trustee McDonald absent, Trustee Smith,
Yes.
Chairman Calendar,
Yes.
5 yes, 1 excused, 1 absent.
Okay. Okay, who wants to lead the discussion?
Barry?
I'll start with an overall question. I guess to Pedro and Kathy. At some, I read these pieces of legislation, right? The first one says that any, I don't know the exact words, but any policy that affects the benefit of the retiree has to go before the board. Before the legislature for approval. And then we have a second one that dives even deeper into the operation. go beyond policy. So it's even spelling out a detailed procedure for what, to me, is an administrative function. And so the overall question I have, Kathy, is there a point at which we as a board could argue that that is infringing upon the authority given to us by the code as a board to manage, or is it a situation where the legislature gives and legislature could take away?
I mean, they give and they could take away, but you could still argue, especially on the bill 3303-15. But let's deal with the first one, which was 330338. Basically, that bill wanted to amend the code to require the GRS trustees to get legislative approval before implementing any policies that would affect employees. And while it's clear from the bill that what the legislature was attempting to do was restrict the board from making any changes to active or retired members' benefits without legislative approval, I don't think the bill accomplishes that goal, because the way it's drafted, it limits it to only section 715B2. And 715B2 says that the B says, for making effective the provisions of this chapter, the board shall adopt rules and regulations to govern its internal organization and functioning, and shall approve and cause to be promulgated from time to time such other regulations as the administrator may require for the proper and efficient administration of the system according to law. And then section 2 specifically says the board shall have, in addition to the duties arising out of this chapter, the following powers and duties, namely to consider and adopt resolutions on matters referred to it by the administrator in connection with changes in policies and revisions. So it appears to me, from the way the legislation reads, that this only affects any matters that the administrator refers to the board in connection with changes in policies, because there are other sections where the board can make the decisions on its own and it doesn't affect that. So as I said, I don't think the legislation accomplishes what it wanted to do, because it wasn't drafted the way it should have been drafted.
So okay, there's two issues. I don't know how we respond to that. I mean, that's the technicality, yeah, and in theory, they'll just go back and fix it once you point that out. But we know. So, but to get to the fundamental issue of at what point does the board cease to be in a fiduciary I'm fighting for the words here. I mean, let me just tell you how, I mean, when I put that along with the second one, I'm asking myself, well, what do you need a board for? If you get a policy request from the administrator that comes to the board, and then the board now has to go to get approval from the legislature, what's the purpose of the board? Why not just go straight to the legislature? What's the purpose of the board?
I agree, and also if it's a rule change or something, a policy that's needed, and the legislature denies it, then that affects the board's ability to effectively run the system that they're charged with running, and it affects their fiduciary responsibility to the membership, because the legislature's inhibited them from performing their duties to the best of their ability.
That's my point. So we're being left as a board with this responsibility, but we've been gradually robbed of the tools we have for us to carry out that responsibility. I don't see, as a board member, what purpose I serve. I mean, every management theory that I think of says that the board is primarily policy making. The administrator runs the administration. If the board, if the administrator is going to come to the board and the board has to go to the legislature, what's the purpose of the board? And if we're not going to have if we don't have final say in policy, how could we have final blame for the impact of the policy? I mean, I don't know how you guys think, but I'm not even getting to the issue of. I suspect what they want. Well, I don't. My first suspicion was that they're saying that they don't want us to reduce any payments to the retirees without the approval. I didn't pay that any particular mind because I know I'm a minority position on this, but I personally wasn't convinced that we had that authority. So for me personally, it was not an issue. But then on top of this, you get this other piece, and then it's saying that it's also now saying that I mean, it seems to me that we have this encroachment on our responsibility as a board, and I'm beginning to ask myself the question: what purpose am I serving on this board? Every major decision, every major policy issue has to be submitted to the legislature for approval. Because I mean, that's what the legislation says. It says any. I mean, I didn't make the connection about the specific reference to the code, but the plain language says any policy issue that affects benefits. Everything we do, any serious policy issue affects benefits. I mean, that's what we're here to do, to manage the benefit. So I'm asking myself, what is my purpose as a board member?
I agree, and it could become cumbersome depending on if they do fix the legislation. You would have to, anytime you need to make a rule change or any effect, you would have to run to the legislature and try to get their approval, and it would affect your ability to do your job in a responsible manner and could cause delays in taking action that have a detrimental effect on the system.
I go further than that. You said it will affect our ability to do the job. I'm saying that it's taking away your job. That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying, what job do I have to do that the administrator can't do? Instead of sending it to us, he sends it straight to the legislature.
All right, I'd like to jump in here for a minute. I think this was a knee-jerk reaction to our resolution that we sent forward about, requesting the 45% reduction. That they got nervous to the point thinking that we're going to do something on our own, and they wanted to intervene. And I think this is the result of that discussion.
Our resolution clearly says that it's a recommendation. And our resolution clearly points to the section of the code that requires us to make a recommendation. And we were very specific to say it's a recommendation. So, but what the language says is any policy that affects the benefit. I mean, in theory, that could mean even an improvement in benefit. So and then we see this other piece, which goes even deeper. It goes beyond policy. It goes into actual administrative issues. How you handle, appeals. And that ain't even policy. I mean, they're going into administrative thing. So if all this says that they have no confidence in the board's ability to manage the system, what do we need a board for? So I mean, when I look at all this thing, just to be clear, I'm seriously asking myself the question: what purpose am I serving? That's my soapbox issue. So I guess the question is, I take it as a legal issue. They have the authority to do that, and we have no pushback. Or do we have any basis for resisting?
Well, on Bill 0338, we can go to the governor and ask him to veto it because they special ordered that to the floor without our knowledge. And so we would have to go to the governor, and I suggest we get to him soon and write a letter to him asking him to veto it as an infringement on the board's ability to make decisions and to properly run the organization as it's originally intended to do. And then
and then they override the veto, which is what's going to happen.
Well, at least we have record.
Then the board would have to make decisions as to how they want to deal with that. Each individual board member would have to personally decide how they want to deal with it, and as a group. And then the next bill,
before you go to the next bill, Kathy, if I can just weigh in, and Trustee, because ultimately that is going to be the $1 million question or position. We're going to assume that the bill is going to pass, and even if the governor vetoes it, that the legislature is going to override it. So this will become law, and you're dealing with two issues that are contrary to each other, where the legislature is saying you got to get all approval. Basically, there's no real role for the board. You're still on the board, and you have a fiduciary duty to the members and to the system. And maybe similar to what happened when they passed the bill about reinstating the loan program, the board has to make a decision as to whether or not you're going to comply with the law, or whether you're going to comply with your fiduciary duty when the two things are at odds, and then leave it to see whether somebody challenges. Let's say the board passes some sort of policy or resolution and that affects the members of the system, and then the question becomes whether somebody challenges that as contrary to what the legislature passes and takes it to court, and the court would have to decide between those two principles as to which prevails. And at some point, this issue would have to be tested and waged in the courts. Unless the board decides, well, we don't want to get into that fight, we're just simply not going to pass any kind of policies that affect the members, which means there's nothing or very little for you to do. So that I'm suggesting that ultimately you're going to have to face that test and decide which side of the road you want to be on.
Is there a legal principle on which the board could resist or ignore it? I mean, what would be our basis?
I think we would need to do some additional research on that area, but in the back of my mind, I'm thinking there's got to be at least a decent argument we can make relative to when you have two conflicting principles, your fiduciary duty obligations as a member of the board versus what the legislature is saying, which we consider construe as an infringement on that, and you know, you got to make a decision, and then the court has to decide whether you're right or wrong. But like I said, I would certainly want to do some more research, because I'm sure we could find some sort of legal principle that at least give you a fighting chance and some legal position to stand on.
That would be an easy answer for me.
Resign.
We don't want to know what that answer is now.
I know you don't want to know. I know you don't want to know. You already know what my answer would be.
I mean, so at what point do we start to draw the line? Do we wait for it to become law and then do it then? Or is that something that in Mr. Nib's presentation we raise?
Well, if I understand correctly, at least on Bill 330338, if that has already passed and gone to the governor, then as Kathy suggested, we want to put our position, or the board wants to put its position on the record and send a letter to the governor, etc. So you do want to follow through the process. As it relates to the other bill, you put your comments for them to consider as they consider in the bill. I mean, so you want to have a record of where the board stands on those issues and bringing whatever your concerns are to the policymakers, to the legislature. And so ultimately, whatever the ultimate decision is, that at least there'll be a track record that you've always been opposed to this and hear the reasons why, and you've brought those concerns to their attention and they've basically ignored them.
Okay.
Okay, any more discussion on this?
Okay, I'd like to chime in on the 0315. Excuse me. Now, I can appreciate what the legislature is probably getting inundated with people of some clout that, you know, all of a sudden their entire annuities benefit have been stopped. Okay, with no notice, no warning, no nothing, and they have all these. Okay, well, I'm just saying that's down. And the question I have is, what kind of lead up, what kind of warning, what kind of timetable presently is going on when we realize that there's something not right in what the retirees getting in benefits?
I'm getting ready
Mr. Nibs,
yeah.
Before you respond, I mean, I may be going out on a limb here, but I don't think we need to be really coy about what's really happening here. 0315, in my view, is basically some sort of special legislation by Senator Soro because her father has an issue. He filed an appeal of the administrator's decision, and that is currently an appeal before the board. Trustee Bory is the hearing officer on that matter. And I basically just see this as her trying to do an end run or to address that issue in the legislature as opposed to in the administrative process that has been set up to address these types of issues. But that's just my view.
Self-dealing.
Go ahead, Mr. Nibs.
No, I'm getting ready to respond. It's going to be very short. Obviously, we're in opposition. However, Title III, Section 716B7 vests the Board of Trustees the ability to prescribe the policies for the proper operations of the system and carry on any other reasonable activities which are deemed necessary to effectuate the intent and purpose of the system in accordance with the provision of this chapter. So therefore, we're in opposition to this legislation. Further, 3 VIC Section 715B4 authorizes the Board of Trustees to investigate and decide on appeal at the request of any member decisions of the administrator except those relating to classification or allocation of positions as provided under Section 496 of this chapter, or relating to discrimination under Section 523 and 531 of this chapter, or relating to dismissals, demotions, suspension under Section 530 of this chapter. In accordance with this provision, the board instituted rules and regulations for such appeals that it has been utilizing for years. So we are definitely in opposition.
Turn it over. There's more in the back.
Opposition to the bill. I don't want to give out everything publicly as to, but it's a very short response. I will attend. I hope to have, because I know there's going to be significant amount of questions, and I'm going to have the legal counsel there with me and also the director of member services. But to me, this is bordering or seems like having to do with return to work issues, because we have never had to recalculate any pension before. In my 13 years here, or Ms. Sasso's 28 years, and we only recalculate if there's an error. So, and if somebody comes back to work and they have not advised us in accordance with the code, the personnel directors have not advised us, and we find out, then we stop their annuities. So, and we stop the annuities, and they are advised that it has stopped because of such and such. You cannot receive an annuity and also be an active member only in certain exceptions, and be collecting an annuity and a salary at the same time. There are exceptions to the rule, and we know what they are. So
this relates to the number of months ago before the virus. We were talking about that double dipping and how many people, and then we had to investigate and so on. Is that what all this relates to?
Well, like Attorney Williams said, there's an appeal.
Okay.
If we are to do this, we would have 8,000 members probably frivolously charging that we need to audit their annuity. How are we going to do that? If this legislation is passed, we have 8,000 retirees. I'm sure some retirees feel they're not getting enough. Maybe we made an error, something like that.
And
So,
if I may, also there's a situation with the empty NOPAs where at the time a person retires, they get a retirement NOPA at a higher salary because it was negotiated at that salary, but they never received the money, and GRS never received the contributions. So we calculate the annuity on what they actually receive. And we have not recalculated the annuity if 5-10 years from now, the government pays the retroactive, we don't recalculate the annuity. The money goes to the member. And so if this were to pass, that would require us years later to come back and recalculate those annuities for people who retired under an empty NOPA. So it has a lot of consequences. And also it may require us, if the annuity is higher, to go back and pay a lump sum money.
And with the possibility that the government will not put in their portion, because that's what the holdup was for many of the people who went out on the early retirement bills. One put in?
Okay.
But if I may, to go back, I think, to the original inquiry or concern, I believe, by Trustee Boring in terms of how the board deals with proposed or pending legislation, the process that the board has established or determined is that when these bills are presented, that the board would have an opportunity to discuss it. The administrator or whoever will prepare testimonies for presentation to the legislature. Those presentations will be circulated to the board for the board's review. And unless there's substantial issues or questions, that, you know, they could go down and give the presentation. If the board needed to, you know, discuss some aspect of the testimony, then they could do so and basically say, well, you know, this is going to want to take this out or have some input into the presentation that will be made at the legislature. And I think that's been done in the last couple of bills that were sent down, or that came before the body.
That is correct. Any other comments on this with you? So, Bobby, you got your answer?
Well, yeah, I guess it will. I'll finally get it. That a part of it was a rhetorical question. You know, the part about what's my purpose on the board. I mean, that's a question I have to answer for myself, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been there before, and if it happens, you know what your answer is. You know what to do.
I mean, so just to clarify, so we're going to put our position at the one that is already before the governor. We're going to we're going to submit our position on that one, and try to intervene. I guess, Mr. Nibbs, you have enough of the discussion to get a sense of what the board position is on that.
I don't have it in front of me.
So then can we?
We still have time to write the governor yet. So we got to do it ASAP.
Then we send it to the board. Pedro's.
Okay.
Okay. Pedro, I will draft on 0338 and try to send it to you by tomorrow, the letter to the governor, to veto. And then you can put your touches in it, and then we can send it to the board.
So just from my thing here. So in the letter to the governor, you're gonna assume from me. Is this okay for me to away in executive session or something? Kind of late for me to ask this one.
We're regular session.
Okay, I guess it was. Are we going to argue on the basis of the technicality, or are we also going to raise the fundamental?
We can argue both.
You want to do everything.
Okay.
And we also, just to play it safe, send a quick email or whatever, a correspondence to the governor immediately, like today, notifying that we have a problem with this and we're going to get something formal to him soon, like within the next couple days. I'm just worried about how to be expediting this to the point where we can intercept a problem.
He's asking if you could send an email or something to the governor, letting him know that we'll be sending a formal letter.
We can send it to Bourne. I think Bourne.
Right.
You can ask them what, we can send something to Bourne.
Bourne and copy the governor.
Yeah, and ask them where they are with this, and then let them know that we're sending something in opposition. Something.
Okay, Dr. Calendar. Mr. Nibbs is going to send an email to his legal counsel, copying the governor, telling him that we're going to be submitting an opposition and request for a veto.
Okay, that would be appropriate. Okay. All right, this portion of the meeting will be closed to the public for matters pertaining to trade secrets or financial or commercial information or personal or legal matter. For matters whose premature disclosure will frustrate the implementation of proposed agency action. Need a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second? Need a second?
I'll second
it. Trustee Colwood.
Yes.
Trustee Barry.
Yes.
Trustee Cohen.
Yes.
Trustee Liger, excuse. Trustee McDonald, absent. Trustee Smith.
Yes.
Chairman Calendar.
Yes.
5 yes, 1 excused, 1 absent.
Thank you. Do we need a break? Do we need to continue?
If executive session is going to be long, I would need a 10 minutes break. If not, I can keep going.
The only thing I had was to update you on the mediation with VI Finest. I don't know if anybody had anything else. It shouldn't take long.
Yes, let me answer. So.